Hello and welcome to our online course in the City and Guilds Level 3 award in the requirements for electrical installations for BS 7671. The 18th edition, as we call it, was issued on the 2nd of July 2018. And what I'd like to do before we actually get into this course is give you a little bit of background introduction to the Institute of Engineering and Technology, the IET. Just talk a little bit about the history of BS 7671, where it came from, and then what are the wiring regulations to you? And then, of course, what are your duties under the wiring regulations? So bear with me and we'll get going. Okay then, so who are the IET? Well, originally called the Institute of Electrical Engineers and formed back in 1871 as the Society for Radio Engineers, the IEE have been looking after electrical regs for a long time. In 2006, the IEE merged with the IIE, the Institute of Incorporated Engineers, to form one body which we now know as the IET, the Institute of Engineering and Technology. And the IET is a professional organisation that deals with all matters of public concern, assists the government makes the public aware of engineering and technology issues. So along with the BSI, the IET have published the 18th edition. So where did it all begin? Well, back in 1881, the very first electricity supply was put in Godalming in Surrey, where the gas street lights were taken out and replaced by new fancy electrical lights. Now the problem being then cable runs and volt drop hadn't been brought into consideration. So street lights down side streets were very dim. Exposed cables were causing problems for children playing in the street, and indeed drunks walking home at night managed to get themselves electrocuted with the bare wires. So something had to be done. It was handed over to the Institute of, the Society of Telegraph Engineers or Electricians, who later became the IEE. And they issued this. This is the first edition. 4 pages, 21 regulations. They called it the Rules and Regulations for the Prevention of Fire Risks Arising from Electric Lighting. We call it the first edition. And back then in the first edition, they realised the importance of isolation, the importance of mechanical protection and labelling of cables, and even introduced periodic inspection and testing. So it's been around for a little while. So, a bit of history then. So this rules document was updated many times until the 8th edition came out in 1924, and it became the regulations for electrical equipment in buildings, because by that time there were more than just streetlights involved. And it carried on being updated and amended until 1981, when the 15th edition gained the new title of Regulations for Electrical Installations. The regs, as we now know them, were amended again and reprinted and changed right up to 1991, when it was reissued under the name Requirements for Electrical Installations, the IEE Wiring Regulations 16th edition. And in 1992 they were granted the British standard BS 7671. A few more amendments, reprints, changes over the years, and then in 2008 it became BS 7671 2008, the 17th edition. That was first amended in 2011, and again over the years it's been amended right up to the most recent version, which we all know as the Big Yellow Book Amendment 3. Now it's been agreed that the book will only be amended 3 times before it's reissued as its next version. So the 19th edition, I can tell you now in advance, is going to be around about 2028. The latest edition was published on the 2nd of July 2018, and it's called BS 7671 2018, the Requirements for Electrical Installations, the IET Wiring Regulations 18th edition. And back since the 15th edition books were issued, they've always been republished in a colour sequence: red, green, yellow, blue, brown. So there we go, right back to 1991 when it was red, right up to the current day version, which is a blue one. So yes, you guessed, our next version, Amendment 1, is going to be brown. But when's it coming? Been a lot of speculation. We are assured by the powers that be that it will be a minimum of 2 to 3 years. So we're looking for Amendment 1 round about 2021. Right then, the wiring regulations. They are simply a code of practice. And even though they're called regulations, they are non-statutory. The standard used in the UK and across many countries across the world relates to design, selection, erection, inspection, verification of electrical systems, regardless of whether the system is permanent or a temporary install. And the regulations cover voltages up to and including 1000 volts AC, 1500 volts DC. So even though it's a non-statutory document, it has been referred to extensively in health and safety guidance notes, the SQCR regulations, and BS 7671 is endorsed by all of these regulations as being the method to follow to comply with their regulations. So let's look at that legislation and just break it down just a little bit for you. The overarching rules, regulations are the Health and Safety at Work Act. If you are prosecuted for committing an offence for a bad installation or bad practices, you will be prosecuted under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Now, the EAWR, the Electricity at Work regulations, written in 1989, were written specifically for the electrical industry to cover electrical requirements. And then we've got the guidance notes and memorandums on the EAWR, which give us their approved codes of practices. And based on those codes of practices and standards, BS 7671 has been published as our document as working electricians for the design and installation of electrical systems. To make it easier to use as well, the book has also been broken down into guidance notes 1 to 8, covering different sections of the book in a little bit more depth and in a bit easier to understand text. Right, let's just look at this a little bit closer, because in the 1974 Health and Safety at Work Act, it imposed the duty on employers. The wording was, it shall be the duty of every employer to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the health and safety of employees. But the EAWR imposes a duty on duty holders as well in respect of work of activities near electrical systems. So the duty holder could be the principal of a company if it's a small company. It could be a nominated duty holder in a larger company. But this person, this duty holder, is responsible for all electrical compliance, and indeed would be the person stood in the dock should it all go to court. Following BS 7671 would prove the due diligence on the part of the duty holder. So it's the duty holder's responsibility to ensure that all of his electricians are working to the correct standard. The Electricity at Work regulations further state that if a requirement of the regulation is absolute, for example, if the requirement is not qualified by the words so far as is reasonably practicable, then that requirement must be met regardless of cost or any other consideration. And they specifically use the word shall. Now, regulations that are absolute are things like system activities, earthing, integrity of conductors, precautions of work for equipment to be made dead, and most importantly, section 16, the competency of persons undertaking the work. These are the guidelines for any judge in a court, and these will be the regulations that anybody prosecuted will be prosecuted under. Now, should the scenario arise that you are actually taken to court, it will be your job as duty holder to prove that you carried out what we call due diligence. Due diligence being, did you follow all of the recommendations available to you, and did you take all reasonable steps with regards to the installation? So good record keeping is a good point here in your due diligence. Make sure you've got the records. If there's anything that's not standard, if it's a deviation from the book, which we'll cover a little bit later when we start looking at departures, make sure it's recorded on the supporting paperwork. That way you can do your due diligence. Another big question I keep getting asked repeatedly is, will Brexit affect these new regulations? If Britain leaves the European Union, will it affect the regulations? The simple answer to that is no. CENELEC is a European organisation which is a member of 33 European states, but there are more than just the EU states contributing to CENELEC. Worldwide, there are many member states and the UK is signed up, so the consequences of Britain leaving the EU shouldn't affect our membership of CENELEC. We hope. That's the end of our little introduction then. Thank you for watching. I hope that's given you a little bit of a background into the book. Over the next few videos and slideshows, we're now going to start breaking down the book into nice, easy to understand chunks. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.